Have you ever wondered what happens at an amusement park after midnight? Because most people assume that it just shuts down and goes quiet till morning, but what I experienced proved that's far from the truth. And what we discovered there changed how I will see amusement parks forever. Because one day, me and my friends decided to go to an amusement park with one goal: find a way to stay after they closed. We wanted to see what it would be like to have the whole park to ourselves. But what started as an exciting midnight adventure quickly took a terrifying turn. If you're anything like my friends and I, every time you guys try to hang out with each other, the conversation goes the exact same way. Guys, do you want to hang out this weekend? Sure, let's do it. Okay, cool. What should we do? And then because no one has an idea of what we should do, we either end up doing nothing or we just play video games with each other. But one day, we got tired of doing the same thing every weekend. And after asking the same question of what we should do, my friend Jake suggested that we go to an amusement park. At first, none of us were really feeling that because we'd been there plenty of times and it was expensive, but none of us had a job. I'm sorry, none of us had a job. Okay, I can say it. None of us had a job. Sorry, I can't stand saying that word. It's very triggering for me. So we were just like, nah, we don't really want to go to an amusement park. We know what to expect. But then my friend said, well, what if we stay overnight? I don't know what Mr. Beast video he watched to give him this idea, but it caught our attention. Confused on what exactly he meant by staying overnight, we asked him, and he told us that we should try staying after they closed, because we could have the park all to ourselves and explore these rides when there's no workers. One of my friends, who's usually the guy to talk us out of dumb ideas, said, how would we do that? They would kick you out of the park when they close. But that was when Jake told us about his older brother that used to work there. And apparently, there was a room in the park that was basically a storage unit. But he said his brother would take lunch breaks in there all the time because no one would ever come inside. So just like that, our plan was born. We all told our parents we were spending the nights at each other's houses so none of them would question where we were at. We arrived to the amusement park around 5 p.m. and the first thing we did was find our hiding spot. We sat outside that storage unit door for about an hour just to make sure that no one ever actually went inside there. And my friend's brother was right. No one did. So a couple hours later, when the closing announcement finally went over the intercom saying that the park was officially shut down and everyone needed to leave, it was go time. The official message warned visitors that the park was closed and everyone needed to find their way out to the exit. So as people are all going that way, when the coast was clear, we snuck inside that room. And my friend's brother definitely wasn't lying. No one ever went inside that place. Because the second we opened that door, I inhaled a tornado of dust into my nostrils. It looked like that room hadn't been touched in ages. Although what my friend's brother did not tell us was just how small this storage unit was. Because there were 4 of us, and this place was about as big as a luxury apartment in New York City. Which in other words, means it was horribly small. We were pretty much all touching legs with each other, just not moving. And I'm pretty sure one of my friends liked that because every time we would scrape legs against each other, he would look at me like this. I still can't tell if he was being sarcastic or not to this day. It also had a wild smell in there, which I don't know what it was, and I don't think I ever want to find out. So we sat there for an hour after closing just to be safe, doing nothing but sitting, not saying a single word, trying to be as quiet as possible. About 45 minutes after closing, we heard 2 security guards walk super close by the door. We saw their flashlights creep underneath. We heard the static from their radios, but I don't think they wanted to come smell the stench that was coming out of this room, so they just walked right by. Then finally, the park lights shut off. 10 minutes later, we heard a big metal clang sound, which was the front gates being shut. Finally, we knew it was time. We tiptoed out, keeping our flashlights low, just in case there were any security guards still there. But after walking around for a couple minutes, we realized the park was completely empty. But little did we know, we weren't alone. When we thought we successfully stayed past closing time without anyone seeing us, we started to get really excited. We realized just how cool this was because the rides were completely still, there wasn't a noise coming from anywhere, and we had the whole place to ourselves. I couldn't believe how different the park looked. During the day, the amusement park is bright colors and big lights all over the place, but now, there wasn't a single one. It made the whole park look like something from a weird dream. It felt like walking through a different dimension. So with the whole park to ourselves, there was only one thing to figure out. What do we do first? Jake immediately pointed to the tallest silhouette in the night sky, indicating that we should go on the roller coaster called Accelerator. Accelerator was this massive roller coaster that shot straight up into the sky, making it feel like you were on a spaceship. It went so high up that it pretty much got as close to space as Katy Perry did a few weeks ago. And it had a drop so steep that it made your stomach feel like it was trying to come out of your mouth. During the day, the line for this ride took hours. We sprinted across the empty park like a dog when you let it off its leash. And once we got there, we climbed right over the barriers and approached the carts. Obviously the rides weren't running at this time, but just sitting in that front cart while the ride was off almost felt more cool than writing it when it was on. One of my friends said it felt like being in a zombie movie, but before the zombies actually show up, which sounded funny and cool in the moment, but little did we know, that would be pretty accurate to what would happen later. Because as we were messing around on the roller coaster, suddenly, a violent noise came from the distance, which sounded like a machine powering up. I thought one of us figured out how to turn the roller coaster on at first, but we all heard this same noise, and it freaked us out, so none of us were laughing anymore. We all stared at each other, making sure that we were on the same page, and then we listened carefully. After that loud sound, it was followed by a low hum with what sounded like gears shifting. There were so many things it could have been. Maybe it was security returning. Maybe someone spotted our lights from outside the park and they were coming to get us. But we didn't see any lights or noises from humans, so that seemed like a long shot. But after hearing that noise, a collective thought went through all of us. We weren't alone. One of my friends suggested that we go check the noise out because the last thing we wanted was to get caught while being on the roller coaster. We know that would have brought big trouble. They probably would have punished us by turning it on while we were on the track. That might be a bit extreme, but I knew it would have been bad if they caught us there. But I didn't think checking out the noise was a good idea either, because what good ever comes from that? So I told my friend that, but after a vote, I was the only one who didn't want to go check the noise out. And of course, I was right. Checking that noise out would end up being a huge mistake, because this is when things started to get weird. Really, really weird. While passing the carnival games section, my friend grabbed my arm, squeezing it super tightly, and I could feel him shaking as he whispered to me, "Do you see something?" Considering I have the vision of a grandma trying to drive on the freeway, I looked where he was pointing, but I didn't see anything at first. Then Jake asked what my friend saw. He said something had moved in between two booths about a couple 100 feet away, and by the shakiness in his voice, we knew he wasn't pulling a prank. Because this man was in a school play when he was younger, and he was awful. He could not act this good, and he'll tell you that firsthand. So we all stared at the spot he was pointing to, but the security lights barely reached that area, so we really couldn't see anything. But then, something tall shifted between two booths, moving from one side to another. We had absolutely no idea what it could have been, because whatever it wasn't human. It was tall. Way taller than a normal person, and moved with a strange rhythm like something straight out of Five Nights at Freddy's. I just wanted to get home to my mama, but of course, no one agreed. Everyone else decided, hey, let's go check out the noise from that freakishly tall, weird-looking creature over there. This is why I don't got many friends anymore. They always try to do stuff that'll get them set into a Saw movie, so I'm like, nah, we're not hanging out. I told them the idea to go check out whatever that was sounds insane, considering how tall and freakishly that thing was moving. Jake countered me by saying it could have been something like a mannequin, and it was nothing to be scared of at all. Note to self, never trust a word Jake says again, because that man had no idea what he was talking about. But while we were debating our next move, I saw another figure move, but this time, by the Ferris wheel. It was doing the same exact weird motions as the other one we saw. And now, I was starting to get paranoid. I whispered to the group that I just saw another one of these figures, and Jake said we need to do something and figure out what these things are, because now, we might be in real danger. My mind raced through every horror movie about amusement parks. What is it? A killer clown? A possessed mannequin? Whatever it was, they were terrifying. As we were hiding, watching these things, one of the figures looked straight at us. Though it was still too far to make out a face, we could tell its body was now facing straight towards us. We all kind of agreed that it was time to go. No one argued with me anymore. So we huddled together behind that cart, trying to figure out an escape plan. Jake whispered to us saying, "We can't go through the exit. It's on the other side of the park, right past all these figures." I suggested using the employee exit near the water rides, and that seemed like our best option, because this was the one way to escape that was the opposite direction of these creepy creatures. So we agreed that we would count to 3 and sprint to the exit, staying together as a group. I honestly didn't really like this plan, because my boy Jake is slower than a turtle, so I knew he was gonna hold us up. But the good thing was, if these figures ever started chasing us, he would have been the first one to go. Not that I would ever give him up to escape, just in case you're watching this, Jake. I would. But we counted down and took off, running as quietly as possible. As we're running, I looked back and realized that once again, these figures were following us with their body. They were all turned toward us. Definitely not human. Their movements and shapes were wrong, and now they noticed us. We sprinted across the park, constantly checking if they followed us. And I've never run so fast in my life, but every time I looked back, I could see their bodies following our movements. We ran until we got to the back exit, but remember earlier when I said that I heard the gates shut? Yeah, well, I guess they locked all the gates, which meant the only way to get out was to go by those creepy figures through the front entrance. Because that gate you could climb, but as we're trying to figure out a way to escape without having to go by those creepy looking figures, we saw another one move through the shadows, but this time, making a noise. We immediately ran in the opposite direction, trying to find a place to hide when my friend pointed to the mirror maze, suggesting that we should go hide in there. It was one of the only places you could go that was inside somewhere and not locked. So with the options we had, it seemed like the best one. We sprinted towards it and went right inside what they call the Hall of Illusions. The entrance featured a clown face, which seemed harmless during the daytime, but now, given this context, was a lot more terrifying. The mirror maze was tricky though, because there was only one entrance. So if something was following you in there, you only had one way to escape. And if you've ever been in one of these places before, you know just how easy it is to get lost inside there. So we pushed through the entrance quickly, but the moment we got inside, the maze unexpectedly turned on. Colored LED lights pulsed along the ceiling and the floor, casting shadows on the mirror that stretched our silhouettes. Terrifying circus song crackled through the speakers. I'm genuinely not kidding that in this moment, I felt like I was actually in a horror movie. We were all freaking out for real now, questioning how or what turned on these lights when the whole park had been shut down for hours. The mirror maze transformed into a disorienting nightmare. Everywhere we looked, we saw the reflection of our frightened faces, but the pulsing lights distorted it, making us look even more weird. With the loud noises and flashing lights, we were sticking out like a sore thumb. Whatever those things were that were watching us before, they knew we were in here. Then came whispers. Soft at first, but then increasing. They surrounded us, bouncing off the mirrors until it seemed like they were coming from everywhere. Jake insisted that it was just the music, but he wasn't too confident with that answer. After running through the maze in a panic from these sounds, I turned a corner and suddenly I was alone. My friends vanished among the infinite mirrors. I called out to my friends, but their responses scattered with all the other noises that were going on. Then suddenly, I backed into someone and screamed before realizing that it was Jake. He pointed out a pattern in the floor lights blinking in a sequence. Following this illuminated path, we were able to find our way back to the entrance. The moment all of us stepped outside the maze, every noise and light completely stopped. We realized the entire experience, the whispers, the lights, the music, was simply the maze's automated programming. And it was triggered by motion sensors. So whenever anyone stepped inside, all of that would suddenly turn on. So we exhaled for a moment, but then we remembered that these figures were still inside the park with us. Once again, we could see a tall, shadowy figure standing in the distance, staring completely at us. So we still needed a way out. After drawing more attention to ourselves than an old person does when they fall down the stairs, we figured our best bet to get out was to be extremely quiet and sneak along the perimeter of the park, hoping the figures would not notice us. And the plan seemed to be working at first. We were walking along the perimeter, and although we couldn't see the figures, there was nothing looking at us anymore. So we thought our great escape was working, but then the figure came into a clearer view as we got towards the front gate. Once again, it jerked to life. Arms shot upwards, unnatural body angles, impossible motions for a human. Although these days, scientists are bringing back creatures that went extinct thousands of years ago, so maybe it could have been anything. We had nowhere to hide anymore. We had to confront whatever these things were. So Jake shined his flashlight towards it since we were finally close enough for it to reach the figure, and as the light reached straight towards it, we finally realized what we were fighting this whole time. Not a monster, not a clown, not a security guard, something completely unexpected. In the bright light of my friend's phone, we could finally see what was haunting us this whole time. An animatronic from one of the rides. Just standing there with its mechanical arms raised as if it was signaling for a touchdown. The animatronics would always make creepy movements, and these had sensors in them too. So during the day, if you were walking by, it would look at you, which explained why it was always moving towards us when we were walking. And I know what you're all thinking. Tyler, an animatronic should have been your first guess, but something was different about these animatronics because these were just in random spots in the middle of the park rather than in the position where they're supposed to be. There was no reason for us to expect them to be there. So we went towards the area where we saw the other creepy figures, and what do you know? They were also animatronics. But why were these animatronics out in the middle of the night after closing? Do they come to life after the park closes? Do they move on their own? Who knows? So after leaving the park, the next day, Jake called his brother to see if he had the answer to this question. And apparently, they would always move these animatronics to the middle of the park after closing to scare any animals or birds away from pooping on the rides. It was basically like their version of a scarecrow. That may have been a good enough answer for the rest of the group, but as someone who watched the movie The Night at the Museum, I still had a feeling that those animatronics may just come to life after the park closes.